Hey, this is WiseGuyVito here, and today having the tier list video for you guys. This will be primary weapons against the Illuminate, which ones are very good and which ones are not so much, and we'll definitely get to that in this video. So as always, like, share, and subscribe, and let's get straight into the video. So S tier is the meta against the Illuminate, especially at higher difficulties. A tier is above average, might have a glaring issue, and once that issue gets fixed or there's a buff to that weapon, it would be S tier. B tier, it's mediocre performance. C tier is below average. Definitely needs to see some buffs in the future. And then D tier, it's just very, very bad. It's a dookie weapon. Needs to see some reworks, some buffs to them. Or it may just not just be a Illuminate weapon. And we'll kind of explain what those weapons are here in just a second. So, let's go straight into the tier list video. So before we start, let's kind of go over these weapons right here. The reason why they're kind of set aside from everything else. So these weapons are kind of just bad weapons. And the reason why they're really bad weapons is because there's either something wrong with them, or they are so similar to other weapons that feel really, really mediocre in the game, and not just mediocre. They just feel very, very weak in the game. That I don't think that you should be just using them like at all. Like, and that goes for nearly all factions, but mainly for the Illuminate as well. I'm not even going to explain all of these. Just know, don't use these weapons. Just don't. Just use something else. Just use something else completely different. You can use anything from C up at this point. Just don't use these weapons. I will go over two of them, and that will be the kill zone weapons, namely the SMG, which is the Stag. I think it's the Stag 11 and the Stag 52 or 53 or 54 or something like that. These weapons are so similar to, like the SMG is similar to the Knight, and the assault rifles similar to the Liberator. There's effectively no difference. These weapons should have way more ammo, in my opinion, to them, especially the assault rifle. The assault rifle literally says it has a drum mag to them. I want 90 to 100 rounds on this weapon for it to be good. And I want the SMG to also have somewhere in the field of 60 to 70 rounds to it instead of the abysmal 48 that's there now. The assault rifle has 50 to it, 55 to it, so it's 10 more. But apparently that's a drum magazine. That's not a drum magazine. That's just an extended mag. It should have way more ammo to it. And I don't care if it's not lore accurate to Killzone. I don't care. This is Helldivers 2. Okay? If they're going to make collab weapons, they should make them good. End of story, right? Because that's a slap in the face to the IP. If you're going to release a weapon that looks like the weapon, but is complete utter dog shit, okay? It needs to be better. End of story. It needs to be better. The sniper rifle is marginally better than all these weapons, but I'll explain that in the tier list. But for the most part, if you're going to make collabs in the future, Airhead, do not make them absolute dog shit and then charge us premium prices for weapons that are dog shit. End of story, right? Now, granted, the SMG was free and the sniper was free, but the assault rifle was not. It cost $6, right? It should be good. And don't give me the pay-to-win argument. This is a PvE game. This is not PvP. I do not give a fuck if someone spends a grand on a gun to then just mow everything in sight and have an easy win button. It's a PvE game. It is what it is. I don't give a fuck, okay? That person is not getting anything. There's no min-maxing in this game. It's literally just, how many things can I kill? And I want to have the feel-good adrenaline rush of killing lots of things and watching the little skull icon on the bottom of the screen go up until like the hundreds, like killing things. That's it, right? So for the time being, right, all these weapons are ass. It is what it is. If you guys want to fight in the comment section about why these guns are bad, or aren't bad, that's cool. I'll look at them and then I'll kindly, respectfully agree to disagree, because all these weapons are ass. Okay, it is what it is. So, anyways, these weapons are ass. Do not use them in Illuminate harder difficulties. They're just dog shit. They're not fun to use. It is what it is, right? Anyways, back to the guns that are actually fun to use, or kind of fun to use at times. The Dominator is S tier because you can one-tap Overseers, but it doesn't do that great against Chaff. But you can just use a support weapon for that, right? But for Overseers primarily, which seems to be the problem that a lot of people have right now, it does very, very well against Overseers. to the point where it can one tap them. So I'm putting it in S tier. Counter Sniper Diligence can 2 to 3 tap them. Can overpenetrate the voteless, which is good. Crowd control, and to me, like it just feels very good to use. It is definitely the better DMR, or like one of the better DMRs, if not the best DMR in the entire game. Scorcher feels like it is. It's an assault rifle, plasma rifle. Feels very good, in my opinion. Does very good against overseers, and does well against voteless because it has a small AOE and it can kill sometimes up to four to 5 of them if they're clustered up very well. Pummeler is B tier for me. I'm almost wanting to put it in A, but I put it in B because I need to be like a little bit conservative. It does very well against the flying guys, Once you are able to stun a flying guy and break off his armor, he stands completely still because he's stunned. You just hit the same spot that you just broke the piece off of, which is now a weak spot in the armor, and you kill him actually kind of fast. And I like the pummeler because it feels good in that regard, and it's versatile. You can one-hand and stuff like that. Tenderizer feels like an A-tier weapon to me. Does very good damage. It's probably like one of the better light armor penetrating weapons in the entire game right now. It just needs more ammo. If I had more ammo in reserves, it'd be S tier in my opinion, but for the time being, I'm going to put it in A tier. The Scythe feels kind of meant to be mediocre. Has moments where it does shine. If you get headshots on the overseers, it feels pretty good. But for the most part, it just feels like mediocre performance. The burn doesn't do that well against the voteless and the overseers. But the reason why I'm putting it in B is because it actually does some work against overseers, but it kind of feels mediocre in all the other ways. Purifier is S tier. It's probably like one of the better guns in the game. There's some people who would argue it is the best gun in the game. In my opinion, it's not, but we'll get to what I think is the best weapon in the entire game, including it's like probably the best gun against the Illuminate. But it does feel pretty good. It handles voteless very well. It handles overseers very well. It doesn't do really well against shields for whatever reason, but for the most part, like it's just a good crowd control and also single target damage weapon, and you should definitely bring it. It feels very, very fun to use. Centenary Breaker, spray and pray gun, does very well against voteless, does somewhat good against overseers. Again, has amazing dot damage, but that's where it stops. If it had stagger damage to it, it would be even better. But the cookout, I think, is better than the Centenary Breaker, and we'll go over that here later. The Diligence, A tier in my opinion. It's definitely one of the better. Again, I do think it's up there with the Tenderizer. I do think it should do way more damage than what it's currently doing. And I think that would be in a good spot as being a light armor penetrating DMR. But it feels good. Overseers, it does very well once you break their armor, and it does well against the voteless as well. So, from a fair distance, you can mop up a patrol very quickly, and it also does good against the drones that go around and like alert Illuminate ships to come in, or like alert reinforcements to come in. Does very well against them. Same thing with the counter sniper diligence as well. Any of these kind of like mid to long range sniper like weapons do very, very good against those guys. So anyways, I'm gonna put the diligence in A tier. Cookout staggers and does dot damage. What's not to like about that? Does very well. Like it a lot in my opinion, and does well against hordes. The crossbow, explosive crossbow, I do think this is the best gun in the entire game currently. Does phenomenally well against voteless and overseers. Does very well. It blows up ships as well. So once you take down the ship's shields, you can then blow up the ships. Like once you shoot like the loading door, hangar bay, whatever you want to call it, right? If you shoot that, it'll explode. So it has some utility there, and it's also a one-handed weapon, so you can bring like shields, like the ballistic shield or the directional energy shield as well, which the directional energy shield is better than the ballistic shield. The Adjudicator, it's A tier for me. Most people don't like it because of the recoil. I've mastered the recoil. I like it a lot. I like this weapon a lot. Does decent damage. Does good armor pin as well. So if you want more upfront damage and like a little bit more ammo, take the Tenderizer. If you want more medium armor pin and less ammo, then take the Adjudicator. But to me, like both, like the Adjudicator feels really, really good. The Sickle basically is like the better assault rifle in the game because it has effectively unlimited ammo. It's light armor penetration. It does really good against Voteless and does somewhat good against Overseers. If it did like a little bit more damage for the Overseers, I would definitely see it being an S tier weapon. But for the time being, I'm gonna put it in A tier because it's more like a chaff killing weapon than anything else. The Plasma Punisher I do think is, I'll put it in A. And the reason why I'm gonna put it in A is because the proximity detonation. I always forget that the proximity detonation exists for this weapon. It can four shot Overseers, which is fine. It just needs to do more direct damage, or more impact, more damage on impact than what's currently doing. But because of the sphere that you shoot detonates on proximity, you kind of lose out on like a little bit of damage. So until they fix that, it's going to be an A tier weapon for me. Blitzer feels okay. When it does really well, it does really well, and when it doesn't, it doesn't. And what I mean by that is that whenever you're swarmed by like 8,000 Voteless, it feels really bad for whatever reason. And for whatever reason, it'll arc things behind the Voteless that you're trying to shoot. I don't really understand that. It does really well against Overseers, but again, if you get swamped by Voteless, it kind of sucks in that regard. So again, when it does work, it works, and it works very well. But when it doesn't, it doesn't. It kind of feels buggy, but then again, it could just be that you're just getting swarmed, and you just need to just back up and just completely disengage, reposition the whole 9 yards. So I'm gonna put it in A tier because it kind of feels mediocre in that regards. It kind of like balances it out, in my opinion. The Punisher, again, mediocre. It feels fine. It staggers. That's great, but it doesn't do any dot damage, and it's just more upfront damage. To me, I'd rather have the dot damage, so like I'd rather have the cookout. But it does fairly decently well for being a light armor penetrating shotgun. The Reprimand, I do think is C tier. I think the damage is really good. It can 1 to 2 shot Voteless depending on like where you hit them. Chest shot, I think is like a two tap to Voteless. But the problem with this weapon is that it still has bullet deviation, which is really, really weird for this gun. And it needs more ammo in the magazine. If it had like more ammo in the magazine and didn't have the bullet deviation, it would probably be an A tier weapon for me. But for the time being, it's just meh. It's just meh for me. It just needs fixes to those problems, and then it'd be way better. The Street Sweeper, which is in my opinion, which is the Breaker, Spray and Pray, does really, really good against Voteless. Does somewhat okay against Overseers, but in that regard, that's it. It kind of feels mediocre, in my opinion. It's really fun to street sweep. Voteless's legs off. Feels very, very good in that regard. But everything else, it kind of sucks at. So I'm going to put it in B tier. To me, it's more of a Terminate killing weapon than it is an Illuminate, but it does have some use cases where it does really, really shine, but everything else kind of feels mediocre. The Scorcher doesn't feel that great to me. I can see where people are saying that it does really, really good against the Voteless or like the zombies, because you can just spray the ground with fire and then just run away, and it does good in that regard. But whenever it comes down to the Overseers, it sucks, especially the flying ones, because the flying ones would just move away from you or just fly higher and just shoot you, and that does not feel good. At that point, I'd rather just have a shotgun at that point than the Torture. But I do believe the Torture is better at Terminators than it is in Illuminate. So I'm going to put it in C tier for the time being. If they increase the range to it, then it probably would be an A tier to test. Probably more of an A tier weapon for me, because again, like, you still have to get kind of up close to the flying Overseers. And not only that too, but the ground ones, if they hit you once with their staff, it's almost an insta kill if you really think about it, because you get knocked down to the ground, they'll just walk over to you again and just hit you again, and you're just dead. There's nothing you can do about it, because like you're ragdolling, right? So yeah, it's good against Voteless, but everything else it is terrible at. So I'll put in C tier. The Sniper Rifle needs to do way more damage. The current ammo economy for this thing is that you shoot 3 bursts of 3, so you get 3 bursts of 3 shots, and then you have to reload. And it can take down Harvesters, which is good, like their legs, so it's good in that regard. But it has horrendous damage fall off, that of the Cookout, which is their shotgun, and it should do way more damage than what it's currently doing. And until it does way more damage and the damage fall off is fixed, it's going to remain here in C tier for me, just simply because that it kills Harvesters, it doesn't necessarily make it good in my mind. It needs to do what it needs to do, which is being a sniper rifle. Again, a sniper rifle. It needs to do way more damage, way more damage, way more damage than what it's currently doing. And it needs to have way less, significantly less damage fall off. And until then, it's going to remain C tier for me. The Defender. The Defender feels very mediocre, but I do think it was one of the better SMGs in the entire game. Just simply because it feels consistent, but it feels mediocre. It's consistent, but yet mediocre. I do think the Pummeler is better against the Illuminate, like I said before, because of the Overseers and stuff like that. But against the Volus, I do think that the Defender is actually pretty good. And of course, the Hull. I do think the Hull is S tier. The stun rounds are very powerful. You can, so the Overseers, especially the flying ones, you can hold them in place with one shot, and then you can either swap to your support weapon and kill them, or you can just beam them down with the flechette rounds, and that's all. You can do all of that while they're still stunned. That's how long the stun duration is. It feels very good in my opinion. So I like the Halt like a lot on the Illuminate, and you should definitely give it a try whenever you're going up against the Illuminate, especially at those hard difficulties. So, anyways, this is my tier list. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section down below. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.